In 1968, a then 15-year-old Belleville, Ontario resident observed a cigar-shaped UFO and two little saucers, not far from his home at 156 Church Street. This was followed by even more weirdness that he still does not understand nearly 40 years later. Reaching out to Brian Vike, director of the HBCC, in 2006, the man, now 53, recalled watching TV and suddenly feeling this urge to get up from his seat and go outside. It was nighttime. He walked across the street to a small brush area, where he eventually observed three weird objects. It has always been strange why I had this feeling to go there, since we were watching TV. And for some strange reason, I just went to this area, which I, as a younger child, stopped going to since I was bitten by a dog a few years earlier. I've discussed this in previous videos, this phenomenon in which people, claim that they're laying in bed and it's the middle of the night and they suddenly have this inclination to go outside and look up or go somewhere that they wouldn't normally go, or wee hours of the morning. According to the witness, the larger craft was cigar-shaped and had portholes. It did not radiate light, but the interior of the craft had a strange moon color, which he could see through the portholes. Two small brown saucers, blinking red and green, flanked the larger object, which the man noted was made of some kind of reflective metal. I could tell it was made of some kind of shiny metal due to the fact that I was about 50 to 60 feet from them. After observing them for a few minutes, the witness noted that the larger object made a 45-degree turn and slowly sped off into the sky, along with the other two following, one by one, after it. Within seconds, jets arrived on the scene, seemingly in hot pursuit. This was confirmed the next day when a local newspaper carried an article about how jets had been scrambled out of the nearby Trenton Air Force Base to investigate some strange lights in the sky. In the subsequent weeks, the news also began to carry reports of an apparent UFO flap occurring in the western provinces. The witness found the timing odd. Probably the most bizarre aspect of the man's story is not the sighting of the three strange objects in a field, but the fact that on the night of the encounter, he remembered something very odd appearing on his family's small black and white television set. He claims that after returning home, he went back to watching the TV. The show he was watching was suddenly interrupted by a notification that viewers were not to call the police. He got the sense that the broadcast was directed at him, as he was actually contemplating notifying the police about the incident just prior to the interruption. It was as if somebody had overridden the TV signal to convey something directly to him with regards to the events of that evening, which is very unlikely. Who exactly would have the time and resources to do something like that? And further, how would they even know, as he was the only one out in the field on that particular evening? Is it possible that regular television programming that evening was interrupted by a local news report indicating that viewers were not to notify authorities, coincidentally the same night jets were scrambled after unknown objects? Or is it more likely that whatever force drew the 15-year-old witness out into the field he had long ago sworn to stay away from also made him believe that he saw a televised public notice that he didn't? But this one is really strange. I don't know. Is it possible that the TV broadcast was interrupted by this, this public service announcement? Hey, don't call the police. I know that I've never heard of something like that before, and I've never in my life had that ever happen. Usually they're notifying people about somebody who's gone missing, or they're doing a test, but I've never heard of something like that. So that's a first for me with regards to a public service announcement to not notify the police. But I guess it is possible. On the other hand, it is also possible that these beings, or whatever they are, were able to interrupt his broadcast to basically make him reconsider what he was considering. And if they are able to do that, that they have abilities far beyond our understanding. That's what I think. In 1976, in Vieques Island, Puerto Rico, Francisco Medina, a fisherman, had arrived at a spot in Cayo La Yaya where he had planned to spend the day diving for conchs. It was around 10 a.m. He tied his boat to the rocks, put on his snorkel equipment, and jumped into the water, descending to about 25 or 30 feet in depth. As per his routine, he would dive to the bottom and collect a conch shell and then come back up for air. He would repeat this over and over until he was finished. At one point, while collecting conchs on the sea bottom, he got the very unnerving feeling that he was being watched. He peered around and saw, standing behind some rocks about 10 feet away, 3 man-like figures. They appeared human, but not entirely. They also did not appear to have any type of snorkeling equipment. Medina, although frightened, noticed that they were curious of his presence, and for reasons he could not understand, he believed that he was not in any real danger. He collected a few more conchs, almost always keeping his eye on the trio, and then, when he could no longer remain, he launched himself to the surface for air. He immediately returned to the bottom, but this time the 3 figures were nowhere to be seen. Speaking to UFO investigator George Martin Miranda, Medina noted that these creatures appeared humanoid but had larger than normal heads. They were completely hairless, with small pointed ears and eyes that seemed to be a mix of human and fish. Also, their eyelids appeared noticeably larger and darker than humans. Their lips were extremely thin and protruded a little bit. Over their upper lips, they had a thin light red line and another line yellow in color. They had tiny noses and their skin was dark green in color, with fish-like scales. On their faces and other parts of their bodies, the scales were a light yellow in color. Their arms were longer than humans, and they had 3-digit hands that Medina could see placed on the rocks as they stood observing him. Also, he noticed what appeared to be membrane in between the fingers. While Medina did not see the creatures again that day, he noted that while diving later that night, he clearly heard a male voice that told him repeatedly, "Francisco, go back to the boat. It is crashing against some rocks." Stunned by what he had heard, Medina immediately swam back to the surface. Apparently, the voice had been correct, as the ropes of his boat had come undone, and the boat was crashing into a nearby reef. He managed to retrieve it before any real damage could be sustained. Curiously, soon after his encounter, Medina returned to the area, and this time he claims he saw another strange sight, a U.S. Navy vessel situated around where he had his underwater encounter. There he could see numerous divers in the water, apparently looking for something. As he watched, a Marine patrol motorboat approached him and ordered him to leave since the area was restricted. Medina told George Martin that he believed that the creatures he saw that day were not hostile, and that the U.S. Navy or government is concealing something in the bottom of the ocean around the Vieques area. But with regards to this case, I found it fascinating that in this area where he had this encounter, these he saw this, U.S. Navy vessel, and he saw these men diving in that area. I know that location is kind of, in Puerto Rico, is well known for the military exercise, the Americans doing military exercises in that area. But this, like the fact that they were where he saw these things, kind of makes you wonder if they already know about them, if the government is aware of these things and they're kind of keeping tabs on them. The same way, I guess, a lot of people think that the forests are being monitored by the government or, space, pretty much anywhere, I guess. People in the woods will talk about encountering these military type guys out in the middle of nowhere. Like, they'll be out way deep in the woods and they'll stumble across these guys, and it's generally in an area where there's been Bigfoot sightings and stuff. So I don't know, I found that interesting, and